And we are live, Senators.
You know how to get there. You go. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the State Senate Committee on Institutions. Today is Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. I'm Joe Benning, the chair of the committee from Caledonia County. Present in the committee room while we are still in a hybrid mode, half of us in person, the other half still remote. Senator Corey Parent from Franklin County. On our screen, we have Senator Mazza from Colchester Grand Isle, Senator McCormick from Windsor County, and Senator Ingalls from Essex Orleans. We are talking about the State House HVAC renovations first this afternoon. And we have had some updates along the way, but we're going to get the latest update today, hopefully. And we've got several folks with us, but we'll take them all one at a time, and I'll give the same explanation I always do for the benefit of the YouTube audience. We ask our witnesses as they start to give a little biography of themselves. It doesn't have to be very long, but at least to give the listening public an idea of who you are and how you fit into the government process. And should you be testifying in a way that maybe you and I understand what we're talking about, but it red flags for me that somebody out there in YouTube land may not know what that means, I may interrupt you, not to be rude, but just ask you to explain what X, Y, or Z means so that our audience is up to the same page as we are. Having said that, Joe Asia, Director of Design and Construction from the Department of Buildings and General Services. Welcome back to Senate Institutions, and the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you. Director Joe Asia, and it's nice to be back in person.
Yay.
So we're back here for the State House HVAC project, and what I have presented for you today is we have 5 total sheets of one cover page showing you the dollars, and then the floor plans of the phases for the HVAC project. So on the first page, we have been asked to sort of break this out into what we're divided up into phases for progression of work. And that work is divided up into our phase 1, which is what we were looking at to do our summer boiler and also take care of the Senate committee rooms on this end and a few extras. And so what we do have is a floor plan that also indicates in 3 different colors: a gray, a mauve, and a sort of a yellow. Depends on which computer screen or printout you're looking at. And so what we have is under phase 1 is indicating when we're looking at. You want me to run through all the pricing first?
Well, probably you ought to do the pricing first because that's up on the screen at the moment.
Okay. All right, so that was phase 1. Phase 2, we're looking to do in the summer or fall of 2023. And when we get to the floor plan, you'll see that is the bulk of the work that we're looking to do. And I'll take care of the air handlers that serve the first floor of the original 1858 building. So I did get to the early part. The balance of the second floor and the third floor. And what we're also looking at in phase 3 would be the summer of 23, if possible. If not, it would be in the summer of 24. So it would be 3 summers that we're looking at tackling this project.
So just to back you up a little bit, Joe, for the benefit of our YouTube audience, this building has always had an issue with air movement. And at least at the present point in time, as I understand it, the Senate committee rooms are fairly okay. They have what's known as an HVAC system that is capable of an override, if you will, should the airflow not be appropriate given the number of people in the room. So the committee rooms in the Senate, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, have an override capability that enables these rooms to have generally okay airflow. The House committee rooms, of which there are many more, does not have that same override capacity. And so having to revise this building for several different reasons, which perhaps you can explain, as to why the airflow movement is important for not just the people in the building, but also the things we have, museum pieces hanging on the wall and trying to protect things. I just want to see if we can walk back a half a step to talk about the need.
Well, back in what really brought this project around, and Tay Southworth, our mechanical engineer, has been to bid on this for quite some time because the State House is not only a working place for the legislature, but it's also somewhat of a museum. And back in 2018, we had a mold issue due to the amount of heat and humidity that we were getting during the summer period of time. And the air handling system being a little bit colder than it should have been, and we ended up with a moisture and mold issue. And so we started to investigate initially into adding a summer boiler to provide some heat into the system to help dehumidify. If we go into more detail, I have to defer to Take Southworth on that. But then COVID came around. And in COVID, we actually were asked to, by the Sergeant of Arms, to be looking at each of the rooms in the State House to see what the capacity was based on the amount of fresh air coming into the room and how many people we could get into those rooms. And some of that also paired up with the social distancing. And with that, we also found out room by room at that point in time, instead of when we probably would have found it out later in the design process in our air handling system, is that we were deficient in certain areas, in certain rooms in the State House, for the number of people that were either sitting in the room or the capacity that could get into that room. And so with that, we have put a project out to bid for design, and we have a designer on board. They've now completed the
Schematic design.
schematic design has been approved, and with that came in just under 16 million.
Yes.
And so what is lost before you is the phasing, and then we've also looked at, well, if we really cannot handle 16 million, we have provided some cost options to deduct from the project. And that's roughly where we are today. We were asked by the governor's office to see what we could do to expedite any part of this. And the best and easiest one to break out first was having a summer boiler in place, because that will provide our dehumidification. And then also replacing the units known as the bunker, the bomb shelter here in the Senate wing. And so that's what we're working on today to get us for this summer to replace that. The ask to the capital bill is not only for the funding to do this phase one work, but because of the economy and delay and hardship of getting materials, we are looking to also pre-purchase the equipment for the next phase, so that as soon as the legislature goes home in 23, we can start construction and not have to go through the whole, project submittal process, order the material and finding out that everything shows up the first week of December and it's a mad rush. So we're trying to plan ahead from that aspect.
Just for the benefit of our YouTube audience, the building is occupied by legislators pretty much from late December through, unfortunately, sometimes till June 1st. So construction window is rather limited for you folks.
That is correct.
Getting the materials that are necessary to have this project move forward is also now subject to delays in the pipeline for materials. Is that also true?
That is correct. And with what's going on in the world, we're going to do our best for this summer, and I'm hoping we can get that, but don't know. With that whole thing going on, as of right now, there hasn't, in any of the projects, to talk to my project managers, we haven't seen a greater issue than what we've already had, so we're still optimistic.
At the same time, we've been having conversations about whether to, and if so, how, expand the State House. Should that come to fruition, the phases that you now have in front of us for today's discussion, are these likely to change to accommodate that?
No, it actually works out well on how we've phased the project.
Okay. So the game plan for phase one.
Now you want to direct us through phase 1 and 2 and 3?
That's it.
They have a side
You
chair.
absolutely can have the softer chair. Yeah. It's fairly comfortable, but if it goes all the way back, don't worry, because it's only Eric behind you. They'll stop.
Thank you. We're happy to
Chair Benning,
Yes, sir.
legislative trust fall.
If we were to add $4.8 million to the highest proposal, would we have a brand new addition to the State House? Because we're talking about $20 million for the addition. If we added $4.8 million, would that give us a brand new addition and then all these fixes?
Did you ever hear that rock group called Aerosmith and that song called Dream On?
Yeah.
I think that answers your question.
Just curious, because you said it would benefit us quite a bit, so I didn't know if that would another 4.8 million, and we could have the new part of the State House and all this stuff fixed up.
I would pay for the engineering and design.
Yeah, well, that's probably true.
These guys
He
didn't.
didn't even put it separate here. He didn't even put engineering and design. He doesn't put it in his figures now because he knows how we react.
Yeah, well, we've got a secret agreement here. They're going to put that designing stuff all into the transportation budget this year.
Oh, do that. Oh, I'd love it to have it over there. Man, I'd kill that baby.
Russ, I should point out, I think you're the only one of the group here that has yet to be in the State House with a full complement of legislators. Is that still true?
That's very true.
No, you're going to learn right off why we need more space.
If we keep it like this, I'm fine.
Yeah, that's true. But Russ won't be able to come to the building if that's the case.
Okay, Russ.
All right, we got sidetracked.
Understood. So,
Tay, could you introduce yourself first?
For the record, my name is Tay Southworth. I'm a mechanical engineer and a project manager with the Department of Building and General Services. I am the project manager on the HVAC project. And for those people out in YouTube land, HVAC is an acronym that stands for heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. So the first phase of the project would replace the air handler that's down in the basement. It would serve the Senate committee rooms and the offices on the second floor on the east end of the 1858 original building. That is the work that we're proposing to do this summer because it was a nice, easy piece to pull out of the bigger project. And it seemed as though it would be able to be designed, purchased, and constructed before December rolls around. The second phase of the project finishes off the rest of the 1858 building, as well as does the annex where the House committee rooms and legislative bonds are located. And then the third phase, which is the one that could be impacted by a possible addition, is doing the air handlers for Ledge Council and the cafeteria. So as we approach that phase, it looks like that phase is actually, or the addition is actually going to happen. We can actually take this $4.5 million out of this project and add it to that project and do it all at the same time.
There you go, Russ. Hope you heard that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me just back up a half a step. If I understand you correctly, the air handling system for the east side of the building will be taken care of first, which basically is all the Senate committee rooms.
And offices on the second floor.
And offices on the second floor. But aren't these committee rooms relatively okay with their HVAC system now?
No, because the way the air handler is constructed, the heating coil is upstream of the cooling coil. And to be able to dehumidify in the summertime, we have to cool the air down to bring the water out of it and then heat it back up so that the temperature is acceptable for human occupancy. So these air handlers were installed back in 1995 when climate wasn't an issue and we didn't have humidity problems.
Okay. Now, the more interesting part of this conversation is you're going to wait 2 years before you fix the house's problems.
That's a really big piece of the puzzle, and I don't think we could get the equipment ordered, even if I ordered it today, in time to do that much work this summer.
Okay. I just want to be able to use that later on when we're dealing with the House getting that bill out of their committee. That's okay. So at this point, if I understand things correctly, you believe you can accomplish phase one in the summer of 22. Okay. I cut you off. I don't know if you had anything more you wanted to talk about there.
Because the project is quite large, we offered you some deducts and what the pros and cons of those deducts are. One of the things that was discovered is in talking with occupants of the building, the windows in the House and Senate chambers are drafty, and people who sit near them are uncomfortable. So the designer is proposing to take out the single row of baseboard radiation that are under the window seats and increase it to a double row to give it a little bit more bang for the buck. It's $1 million worth of work. It doesn't really affect the air quality in the building or the ability to dehumidify. It could be a standalone project that's done sometime in the future, or it could be done now while we have the right trades in the building.
Would it be cheaper to replace the windows?
No,
The windows are historic and they would be restored and the storms would be replaced. So I'd be taking the windows out, removing all the glazing, reglazing, sealing them, reglazing, and reinstalling.
But I owned a building and I owned a condo in a building that was on historic preservation, and I had to do new windows, and there were approved windows we could use that were modern, like triple pane windows. Can't do that here.
I don't think historic preservation would allow that on the State House.
So if I've got this straight, you're trying to improve the heat, if you will, for both chambers, in spite of all the hot air that's normally generated in those chambers?
well, you know, hot air rises and has to be replaced by cold air from somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, but you'll be gone next year, Joe.
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna be gone, I'm just moving my chair.
The second alternate we're proposing is basically postponing phase 3, which is the work of the air handlers and ledge council and the cafeteria.
Okay,
And the third alternate, and the third alternate would replace the air handler that's in the mechanical room that serves the House, committee rooms of the Ledge Council, Legislative Lounge. And it would give us the ability to do the dehumidification and the improved ventilation, but we would delay doing the terminal units or the downstream distribution in that area until that space is renovated. Because right now the return ductwork is inside the walls, and it's a really bad aspect ratio. It's about 48 inches wide, about 6 inches high, and air doesn't like to flow through a wide flat duct. I'd like to see it closer to round. And if we took those out of those walls, then any of those walls could be moved to make those committee rooms appropriately sized.
And better air distribution. Right now, it's all coming out of it's either from the window or side unit, and there's bookcases that are hanging there. It hits it and it blows across people, and the people at one side of the room are overly warm or cold, while the other ones are the opposite, with a breeze on.
all right. Shall we move to page 2 of your series?
So the next page is what we have up in the floor plans indicating the 3 phases that we just discussed. So phase 1 is in gray. If you're looking at the colored photo, it is gray. If you're looking at the black and white, it's I can't see the distinguishing color. So phase 1, and here again, along in the Senate.
Okay,
Which area is over here, this area here, in the back side of the State House to the north side is where the summer boiler is expected to go, and that's why that one is gray. So, and then we have again, it depends on what color monitor you have, whether it's a purple or mauve or what, or lighter gray, a shade of gray, is phase 2. And then we also have in the yellow, the phase 3 area. And so this is for the first floor. If we go to the next page, we're on to the second floor. Oh, sorry, it was the mezzanine in
phase 3.
And that is phase 3. Yep. On to the next page, please. Here we go for the second floor. So here you see under phase 1, we have 3 rooms, 18, 19, and 20, that will be picked up by the replacement of the air handler under phase 1. And then you can see the large section of both phase 2 and phase 3 and how those areas are impacted.
Get the 40s. All right.
And then to the third And on this drawing here, we see on the third floor plan is all of phase 2 work.
Okay.
Good. Can we hit all the floor plans?
I did.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions? I can't see you guys on the screen, so if you do, holler out.
You ready for me to take that down?
Ready to take that down? Eric has his hand up.
Mr. Chairman, Eric Philhorn, VGS. I don't think I heard it said out loud, and for the sake of audience understanding of why all of this is happening, because there's been a lot of talk about COVID and expansion and all of that. The reason we started this project a number of years ago was because we had a mold problem in the building because of high humidity. And so the real prize here is to be able to control humidity throughout the building. I just felt that should be.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That was actually pre-COVID that we were experiencing, especially during the summertime, a lot of very large air handlers making a lot of noise.
We
If
are,
I recall correctly.
we are spending tens of thousands of dollars a year to maintain dehumidifiers all over the floor here in the summer. And so this is going to make it possible for us to bring the building back to something resembling normal.
Right.
Okay. This three-phase project, has this pitch been made to our House counterparts?
Yes, it has.
Any pushback that you noticed at some point?
I don't recall any pushback from them. I think it was once we got through all the phasing and how it works and with that potential of the thought of an addition, how that Kay has broken this out in different phases and works quite well with that. We are going to go with a construction manager. So, while we're looking forward and how we price this out and move forward for our construction contract, we'll work quite well with that. We can get pricing and be on board, locked in, and if the addition happens, we don't have to move forward with it, and we won't be buying equipment until we know that will take place. So,
Okay, Alex, you want to take down the screen share? Committee, any questions? Don't see anybody raising or screaming.
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
All right, with that, gentlemen, unless you've got anything else you'd like to add, I'm sure we're gonna have you back when we get the bill from the folks on the other side of the building. Tweaks may have been made. If you want to have a conversation about it, we may invite you back in for a larger confab.
we're here for it.
Thank you all very much for coming today.
It's a pleasure to have you back in the building, sir.
We're working our way toward getting the rest of the committee back here soon.
I'll see you on the interstate, Senator.
All right, good afternoon. I am expecting from the University of Vermont, Richard Cate, Vice President and Chief Financial Officer.
He is just entered.
He is just entering now. Committee, for the purpose of conversation, we are shifting over to the use of ARPA funds for HVAC upgrades to dorms and faculty offices at the University of Vermont. Wendy Koenig, I happen to see you on the screen as well. I'm assuming you are joining Mr. Cate.
I am.
Okay.
Hi, Wendy. Hi, everybody. Nice
Hi
to see
there.
you.
Some of us are in the committee room and some of us are not. We're sort of in a hybrid mode. I don't know if you were on earlier when I explained to our previous witnesses, but for the purpose of us continuing on YouTube, I am asking that as you identify yourselves, you just give us a brief bio of who you are and talk about how you fit into this conversation. If you are testifying about something that we may know about and have familiar terminology with, it may be that red flag pops up in my mind saying that perhaps members of the YouTube audience will not know what we're talking about, and I may interrupt your testimony to try to bring them up to speed. With that, Richard, welcome back to the famous Committee on Institutions, and the floor is yours, sir.
Good afternoon, all. Richard Cate, Vice President for Finance Administration at UVM. I will show you something I previewed with you last time, and just to use as a, if Alex would enable me to share, perhaps.
Yes, you should have permission now.
Right. So hopefully you can see that.
Yes, we can.
You can see it now.
So what we had been asked to provide by the some folks in the legislature was information in terms of how we might use one-time money for HVAC projects at the university to improve air quality and upgrade things. And so we provided this $30 million request that would go into a variety of buildings across the campus, ranging from some in the older buildings like Old Mill to some of the kind of the mid 20th century buildings like Gibbon. We, in some cases, it's a new equipment to actually bring ductwork in where it hasn't previously existed. In other cases, it is replacing outdated air handlers and fan coil units. We have a central heating and cooling plant, and it serves many, not all, but the vast majority of the buildings on this list are served by that. So the source of the heat and the cooling is in pretty good shape in terms of modern chillers and boilers. But in terms of the ventilation within the building, it's a different story. There's a second page to this right here that moves on from the Ira Allen Chapel and up through some of the underlying infrastructure. The very last piece would have us replacing a few of the steam lines that we've got going into some of the buildings in order to improve the efficiency of the system and thereby use less energy. So it is an array of projects that we think we would do well to be able to do. They're on our list, but it's just a matter for replacement or improvement. But in this case, as always, there are limited resources. So this is how we would use any funding we would get. Open to any other questions you may have.
Richard, I'll start off. Prior to COVID, was the HVAC system that you are now proposing to correct an issue for the university?
I apologize. You broke up at the very end. I didn't quite.
Sure. I am curious, the proposal that you have in front of you, would this have been something that you would have brought to the legislature prior to COVID?
Certainly would have if the opportunity had allowed. It has not been our experience that there has been much capital money available other than the $1.5 million that you typically give us. So we, how shall I say this? We would have prioritized our general appropriation ahead of this, the recurring money, but this certainly would have been something that we would have been interested in doing if on a regular basis larger amounts of capital money were available.
Yep. Well, it's not meant to single you out in any way. We have several different entities. The court system is the next one that comes off the top of my head, where people have suddenly started concentrating on HVAC systems. And
I see.
Casting my mind back 5 years, I don't remember anybody talking about HVAC systems being a problem necessarily.
We actually have done tens of millions of dollars of work with our own funding on HVAC over the last decade. We do and have done quite a bit in that area. To your point, however, I do admit in this case, we provided HVAC projects because that was the specific request.
Sure. Yeah.
But to your point, we really have done a lot of work on heating and cooling at the university, especially because we have so many of these older buildings and that were never designed. You know, the air conditioning and ventilation systems in a lot of these buildings were we experienced all over Vermont is you open the window. So over the years, we've tried to improve on that.
Right. Well, our previous witnesses were talking about the State House and how the original conversation came up because we were developing mold issues. And this is a working museum with all kinds of architecture and portraiture that were threatened as a result of the mold question. So that's where our HVAC system conversation began. I was curious as to whether the university had a similar situation in front of it.
We were not confronted with that sort of problem. We've tried to continually do work to avoid that type of thing. We have not had specific emergencies per se, but we have been in a kind of a mode of trying to have continuous improvement on what we've got.
Good.
I also think that the pandemic just underscored the need for some of these improvements. They've existed for some time, but with renewed intense scrutiny of how safe our buildings are in terms of air handling and quality, the pandemic just underscored the need to work on it more quickly.
Wendy, could I just ask that you identify yourself for the record, please?
Sure. I'm Wendy Koenig. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the University of Vermont.
Thank you. Committee questions? I can't see anybody, so if you have your hand up, you'll have to shout. Perhaps we could take the screen share down, Alex. Richard, by any stretch of imagination, have you brought this proposal already to our counterparts over on the House side?
Absolutely, yes.
And any understanding of what the reception was?
I'll let Wendy follow up, but I thought it was interest. But they, like you, I'm sure, are confronted with many other opportunities to spend money. So there were no commitments made, but they were interested in what we had to say. But I wouldn't say I came away from there with a strong impression of what was going to result. There was some discussion, I think, about what other committees might have to say about the matter within the House, specifically appropriations.
Yeah, that's true. And the same thing will happen when it gets over here. But one of the things our committee is trying to do is stay on top of the conversation that's taking place in the House right now. We will get the bill probably in the next 2 weeks. And when we have the bill, they will have made whatever tweaks they wanted to the governor's original proposal and any other proposals that have come along. But at that point, we may ask you to come back in, or you may have an interest in coming back in if something has been tweaked in a way that raises an alarm bell or something of that nature. So, committee, any further thoughts? Not seeing any hands. I want to thank you both for coming by this afternoon. And hopefully we'll be meeting back with you again in person here live at the State House, if possible.
Good.
I was able to go into the building yesterday, and it was really nice to be back in.
It is very surprising when you get back in here and you're actually holding pieces of paper in your hand rather than staring at the screen.
It's much better.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Nell.
Thank you, folks, for coming.
Bye-bye.
I believe that concludes the committee's business.